Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we have a new poll from Emerson College Polling for the 2025 New York City mayoral race, and it finds that Zohran Mamdani leads Andrew Cuomo, Curtis Sliwa, and Eric Adams in the mayoral election, and in a head-to-head matchup versus Cuomo in the hypothetical scenario. So Emerson College Polling, one of the most reputable polling sources in the United States, also just recently did a poll on the Boston mayoral race as well, who just had his preliminary election back on Tuesday, and I do have a video coming out as well in the future on that one. Now, in that poll, Emerson actually got the actual margin result essentially 100% accurate in that race. So I am putting a lot of stock into this New York City Emerson College poll. So the poll finds that New York City voters find Democratic nominee Zohran Mamdani with 43% of support in the November election for mayor, while 28% say they support the former governor and independent candidate, Andrew Cuomo. 10% support Republican Curtis Sliwa, 7% support incumbent mayor Eric Adams, with 9% still undecided. And this is what the numbers look like displayed in kind of bar chart style here. So just looking really close here, obviously plus 10 points to get him to 38, plus an additional 5. Mamdani's leading over Cuomo by about 15 points in this race. And just doing the math here, the way the race has been going, this is consistent with a lot of other polls that we've seen. That 9% undecided, even if Cuomo won every single one of those undecided voters, the math is not there to defeat Zohran Mamdani in a four-person race. Zohran Mamdani has a high enough floor of support where most polls show him now getting in the low to mid 40% or so. He hasn't hit that over 50% number yet, which is good news for the anti-Mamdani voters, but Zohran Mamdani is now at that low to mid 40% range, where in a four-person race, there's not enough outstanding vote to stop Zohran Mamdani. Now, in a head-to-head matchup, there could potentially be a scenario where that's possible, but just look at the numbers here. Cuomo at 28, Sliwa at 10. If you combine them, that would get to about 38%. Eric Adams at 7. Add 7 to 38, you get 45. At that point, that'd be about 2% over Mamdani, with still 9% undecided. So that's kind of the reality of this race right now, is in a lot of my videos, I've been going off the assumption that Sliwa and Adams, if they dropped out, their voters would all support Cuomo. That's actually not a very big guarantee, which is there are a lot of New York voters that are still very upset with the job Andrew Cuomo did as governor, that even if Sliwa and Adams dropped out and endorsed Cuomo as the anti-Mamdani candidate, they may still refuse to vote for Cuomo just out of political spite for how he was as governor. So even if Mamdani and Cuomo faced off, it's still potential those 9% undecided could break a good number of them for Zohran Mamdani, and we'll be getting into that later in the poll. In Emerson's first general election poll of the New York City mayoral election, Mamdani starts with a 15-point lead over Governor Andrew Cuomo, said Spencer Kimball, the executive director of Emerson College Polling. Mamdani has a 29-point lead over Cuomo among voters under 50, leading 49% to 20%. And that lead strengthens to 6 points among voters over 50, leading 39 to 33. Those who say they are very likely to vote in the November election break for Mamdani 46% to 27%, while those who say they are somewhat likely to vote break for Andrew Cuomo 34-27. 77% of voters say they will definitely vote for the candidate they chose, while 23% think there's a chance they could change their mind and vote for someone else. Now, this is where things get very interesting here. Zohran Mamdani voters are locked into their candidate. 85% will definitely support him, compared to 74% of Sliwa voters, 72% of Cuomo voters, and 66% of Adams voters. Several head-to-heads were also tested in a matchup with just Mamdani and Cuomo, and it found that 47% supported Mamdani and 40% supported Cuomo, with 13% saying they are undecided. Now for Mamdani versus Mayor Eric Adams, a much larger lead for Mamdani here. And this one, Mamdani breaks 51%, Adams only has 30, 19% undecided. So even if Adams won every single undecided voter, it would not be enough. Zohran Mamdani would win that matchup. For Mamdani versus Curtis Sliwa, it's like the Eric Adams one, but even worse for Sliwa. And this one, Mamdani gets 52%, 28% for Sliwa, 20% are undecided. This, again, is very consistent with a lot of other polling that we've seen. which is that Eric Adams and Curtis Sliwa have no chance at defeating Zoran Mamdani in a head-to-head matchup, and them being in the race is really only playing spoiler to Andrew Cuomo even having a chance at defeating Mamdani in this race. Now, Mamdani versus Cuomo is still significant that Mamdani versus Cuomo is a 7-point lead for Zoran Mamdani with 13% undecided. There is enough undecided vote left out there for Andrew Cuomo to defeat Mamdani, but at 13%, there's also a realistic scenario Mamdani gets enough of that undecided vote to win. Because to win this race, at this point, with at 47%, Cuomo at 40%, Cuomo would have to win a large percent of that 13% undecided. Where if Cuomo or Mamdani essentially gets to 50%, he could essentially win this race really without too much of a problem. So what you're going to see here is Cuomo has to essentially win roughly 11 of that 13% of undecided voters to really win this race. It could go 50-50, and then at that point you're basically looking at a few votes here and there to see what happens, but Cuomo would need to win a vast majority of those undecided voters. And that is a very tall task for him to do, especially given his popularity issues in polling. Where Mamdani is the most favorable name recognition of the candidates, with 48% having a favorable view of him, while 34% view him unfavorably. While Cuomo holds a 36% favorability rating, while 51% view the governor unfavorably. That's the issue here. Two things are true in this race. Andrew Cuomo is the most popular and best alternative candidate to Zoran Mamdani in this race in terms of actually beating him at the general election level. Where at the same time, Andrew Cuomo is also increasingly very unpopular, and Zoran Mamdani has the popularity advantage over Cuomo. So much so that even if Cuomo gives the anti-Zoran vote the best chance at winning, Cuomo still may very well lose in that matchup due to his own unpopularity. Now for Eric Adams, it's even worse. 26% favorability rating among his constituents, while 61% view him unfavorably. Just to give you an idea here, President Donald Trump, who is a Republican, who even though New York City is his hometown and his home city, obviously President Republican, very unliked, here he has a 31% favorability rating, while 64% have an unfavorable view. So that's right. Based on the actual numbers here, Eric Adams is more unpopular in New York City than Donald Trump is, which gives you an idea of what his chances at becoming mayor here. Where for Curtis Sliwa, he is also unpopular by a large amount, 24% favorable, 45% unfavorable, but with Sliwa, 31% of respondents say they are unsure, by far the most unsure in this race. A plurality of voters, 42%, think that their community safety is no different than it was 4 years ago, while 39% think their community is less safe, only 19% think it is more safe. This question was also asked in the Boston voters ahead of the city's mayoral preliminary election. 45% think their community in Boston is more safe, 21% said less safe, 35% said no different, which again could be playing into the unpopularity issues for Eric Adams. It also says that 2/3 of New York voters, 66%, support a 2% tax on those earning above $1 million annually, while 18% oppose. Mamdani voters support a 2% tax, 81-5, while Cuomo supporters support a 2% tax, 56-30. 43% of New York City voters say their family finances are worse off than a year ago, while 41% think they're about the same. 17% say they're better off compared to May of 2025. Those who say they are worse off have decreased by 6 percentage points, while those who say they're about the same have increased by 6. New York City voters think the economy, 27%, threats to democracy, 25%, are the top issues facing the U.S., followed by healthcare at 11%, crime at 11%, and housing affordability at 9%, and immigration at 6%. This Emerson poll was conducted with PIX11 and The Hill, and the New York City survey was conducted between September 7th and 8th, and a sample of 600 New York City voters with a margin of error of 3.9%. Okay, so there's a lot to take away from this poll, and I've kind of been going through it throughout the video and throughout the poll as I've done so. But the more polls that come out in this race show a pretty consistent trend in this New York City mayoral race for 2025, which is this is the most competitive New York City race we've seen in a while now, and that is because this is the first one that's not a Democrat versus a Republican in New York City. In 2021, Adams was the Democrat, Sliwa was the Republican. It's New York City, massive Democratic win. In this race, you essentially have 3 Democrats running against each other and 1 Republican. And that's why this race is so competitive, because a lot of Democratic voters are split between Mamdani, Cuomo, and Adams. Now, a few trends have become apparent in this race, which is Zoran Mamdani right now seems to be the likely favorite to win, because multiple polls that have come out are showing very similar numbers and similar trends. A Quinnipiac poll that just came out a few days before this one shows Zoran Mamdani around 45%, not too far off from Emerson's 43%. In this one, Cuomo is 23 and Emerson's 28. Sliwa is up to 15, Adams up to 12, 4% undecided. But again, the problem remains, which is there's too much support for Zoran Mamdani and not enough support out there to stop him, with Sliwa, Cuomo, and Adams all in the race. The math just isn't there to stop him in this race. And that trend has become very apparent over the last few months here. Whatever amount of anti-Zoran Mamdani vote there is in New York City, it's not enough for one candidate alone to win when the other two candidates are also in the race. And that's why when you see matchups for Cuomo versus Mamdani, who Cuomo is the leading second place candidate to Zoran Mamdani right now. Curtis Sliwa has been polling pretty consistently in third place. Eric Adams has been polling pretty consistently in fourth place. And that's where, if everything remains constant in the race and all the candidates stay in, I expect we'll see it finish like that. Where Mamdani right now is leading in the Real Clear Politics average and the Decision Desk HQ average by around 15 points. And based on the polling data, it certainly seems to be tracking towards that regard. Now, there has been rumblings for a while now that President Trump is trying to get Mayor Eric Adams a job in his White House administration and to get Adams to drop out of the race to give a better opportunity for Cuomo to win. As President Trump is probably no ally of Andrew Cuomo, but would rather have Cuomo be the mayor of New York City than Zoran Mamdani. Now, even if Adams drops out of the race, this is the problem for the anti-Mamdani vote. Because let's go with the polling average, where Adams is getting 10.5%. If that is taken out and all of those votes are added to Andrew Cuomo, well, that brings Cuomo up to about 34.8%. That's good. He gets him a lot closer in striking distance versus Mamdani and is enough undecided other vote to potentially be in range of defeating Mamdani. But he's still down about 5 points, which means Curtis Sliwa's 15.5% is again playing spoiler in this race and stopping Cuomo from having the best possibility to actually beat him. Now, this poll from Emerson is very striking. Again, after the Boston mayoral race, I already held Emerson in high regard on their polling, but I think also this is pretty important to take away, which is versus Mamdani and Cuomo, Mamdani still starts out with a 7-point lead. So even whether it's Cuomo or President Trump or whoever, even if they get the race down to Mamdani versus Cuomo, there's still a really good possibility Mamdani may just win outright. Now, it is possible also that Adams and Curtis Sliwa, even if they dropped out, their names would still remain on the ballot. So they may be getting 2 or 3% vote or so that vote for people that vote for them anyway, who are not paying attention to this race super closely and don't know that they've dropped out, and that alone could play spoiler in the race. That's a very under-talked about situation. But even if they were to drop out of the race, Andrew Cuomo in this poll still loses by 7 points. Again, meaning he can only afford to lose realistically about 2 to 3% of that undecided vote without winning this race based on this numbers. So it's very interesting that even in the head-to-head, Mamdani may still defeat Cuomo. But the fact remains, Cuomo presents the anti-Mamdani vote the best opportunity at winning this race. So what happens from here? We'll have to wait and see. It's September 12th. The election is going to be in early November. Certainly this race is very interesting right now. I think if the election's held today, Zoran Mamdani wins and by around that 15-point margin. If Eric Adams drops out of the race, I think we see a more competitive election where Mamdani wins somewhere around the 5 to 10-point range. I don't think we're going to see Andrew Cuomo win all of Eric Adams' supporters, but I think we're going to see him win a pretty large majority of them. But again, with Mamdani, Cuomo, and Sliwa in the race, the math is not there, I don't think, for Mamdani to lose. Now, if Sliwa drops out, this race gets a lot more interesting. Cuomo could win, but again, I think Zoran Mamdani narrowly leads even in that regard, like this poll showed. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe. If you did, leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts, and hope to see you in a future video.